How does this thought lead to the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Yeah, that's where it all begins. But then, so initially we knew that we have atoms. But what was the structure of the atom? No one knew. Then I don't know what the exact chronology is and which year what happened, but then we discovered that the atom is mostly empty space, but there's a nucleus at the center. So that was one thing that was discovered. Then the electron was discovered, and then it was discovered that the nucleus of an atom contains protons and neutrons. I think the proton was first discovered. Then eventually the neutron was discovered. So neutrons are neutrally charged particles. They don't have any charge. Protons are positively charged. Electrons are negatively charged. Like charges repel each other. Opposite charges attract. These are the basic laws. So that's how it happened. So this is the beginning of quantum mechanics. We understood what the nature of the atom is. And then they discovered that certain elements, I think it was discovered in the late 19th century, that certain elements are radioactive. They give off some kind of radiation. Now, what that is was not understood, but I think it was in the late 1920s or early 1930s, after the discovery of the neutron, that it was discovered that certain elements in the periodic table decay at a given rate because and they emit certain particles called alpha particles, which are helium nuclei. So there are 4 different kinds of radiation: alpha particles, then beta particles, which are electrons, then there is gamma radiation, and then there are neutrons. So this was eventually discovered over time, and then it was a German scientist, I believe, who came across the idea that if a neutron can hit an atomic nucleus and break it up, and if the breaking of the atomic nucleus also releases more neutrons, then if you have sufficient quantity of that substance, these neutrons will start hitting atoms one after the other. It's going to cause a chain reaction, which will give off more and more neutrons, and that could give off an enormous amount of energy. So that was the first time the idea of a nuclear reaction, explosion, was thought about in the early 1930s. This was a German scientist, if I'm not mistaken. And then at this time, there was this geopolitical angle that Adolf Hitler was coming to power. The Nazi Party, Germany had been deeply humiliated at the end of the First World War. The nation was destroyed and the economy was destroyed. And then the Nazi Party comes to power. Hitler starts rebuilding the economy, and he wants to rebuild Germany's pride and regain its lost prestige and territories and all that. And this was a very dangerous time. Hitler was seen as a very evil person. Obviously he was evil, we can't deny that. So
he was very evil.
let's we need to put that on the record.
Yeah, we both think he was evil.
Yes, absolutely.
And now we'll move on with the conversation, because we're all about learning and correcting the past slightly.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we are experimenters, researchers, questioners, and that past clip was just a form of understanding the truth better. We've understood the truth. He was Satan in human form.
Absolutely. No denying that.
Let's go on, sir.
So this guy, the German scientist whose name I don't remember right now, he came up with this idea that the release of neutrons could give rise to a chain reaction, which could give off an enormous amount of energy from a small amount of matter, a radioactive element. So this, I think, idea, I think he patented that, and then he sold the patent, if I'm not mistaken, to the British government. And eventually, there's this guy called J. Robert Oppenheimer, who was a theoretical physicist. He was in some university in the US, and he came upon this idea, and he initially rejected it, and he was of the opinion it can't happen. But I think one of his students discovered that German scientists had actually made this happen with uranium. Uranium-238, I believe it was. There are 2 different isotopes of uranium, 235 and 238 mainly. So I think German scientists were the first to do this. They used neutrons to break apart a uranium atom, and that released more neutrons. So that is something that will definitely give you a chain reaction if you know how to make it happen. So that news came out, and then Oppenheimer and his student, they tried it out, and they discovered that it actually works. And then you had the birth of the atom bomb project, because the Germans had already taken a lead. They had already done this experiment before the Americans and anybody else. So then the US government got involved in this.
Let's rewind a little bit to understand this better.
Yeah.
In the 2020s, where we are right now, would an equivalent technology be